Do you ever feel like you're spinning your wheels, struggling to understand why certain tasks drain you while others energize you? What if God wired you with specific strengths for a specific reason? Today, I am joined by a returning guest who I am so thrilled to have back. She was on episode 59 talking about working genius. Today, we are going to restart this conversation. It was one of the most downloaded episodes of 2024. And we're going to tie it in with the beauty of our temperaments so that we can more fully understand the beauty of the way that God created us uniquely and how he offers us these little hints where we are energized and operating in our genius so that we don't get burnout, so that we can really thrive in our God-given missions. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Persistence in Prayer podcast hosted by Catholic mindset coach, wife, mother, educator, and speaker Kylie Hein. Kylie is passionate about helping you deepen your relationship with God through the power of prayer. This podcast is a space for high achievers who want to do it all, but also want to prioritize their spiritual life and grow in faith. Join us as we explore the beauty of persistence in prayer and the transformative impact it can have on our lives. Get ready to discover practical tips, insights, and inspiration to help you develop a daily prayer practice and cultivate a deeper sense of trust in God's plan for your life. Let's journey together towards a more fulfilled and faithful life as we invite the Holy Spirit in. Let's begin. Karyn, I'm so excited to have you back. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Kylie. I've really been looking forward to this.
Karyn is a wife, mother of three, musician, and certified professional coach and working genius facilitator. She is the founder and owner of Supporting Stars, where she works with teams to leverage their talents to improve productivity, engagement, and morale. She also provides life coaching to wives of high-level performers to help them balance their supportive roles with their own dreams and goals. Karyn is dedicated to helping teams and individuals understand themselves and each other better so they can work better together and achieve more with more joy, fulfillment, and success. All right, we're going to jump right in. But for those who have not listened to your last episode, Karyn, do you want to tell us just a little bit about how you got into this work?
Sure, absolutely. I just kind of stumbled upon it. I always say that the Holy Spirit put the working genius in front of me, literally on a library bookshelf. I was in our local library looking for some of Pat Lencioni's other books on organizational health and somehow was not even aware of the working genius, and it was there on the shelf. And I was like, what is that? And I pulled it off, checked it out, and it changed my life. Changed how I look at myself as a mother. It helped my marriage. And then I just dove really even more in, did the certification, and the story just goes from there. So yeah, it's just been such a valuable addition to understanding myself and how I interact with others. It's just been really amazing. So I'm very grateful for it.
Can you give us some tangible examples of how this has transformed your motherhood and your marriage?
Sure. I think I talked about this maybe on our last episode. So for anyone who's hearing this again, sorry for the repeat, or take it as a reminder. Galvanizing, for example, is one of my frustrations, and we can get into describing what those are too, for anyone who doesn't know. But that explained why I wasn't, the fun parent in the morning trying to get the kids out of bed to get ready for school or get everyone to put their shoes on for going to mass. Is that going to be a fun thing for every parent to do? Like, what parent really enjoys that? But because galvanizing is one of my frustrations, it explained why that was so painful for me, and it was very freeing. Instead of thinking, oh, I'm a bad mom, I'm a crabby parent. It was just like, okay, God didn't wire me to be like the rallying person in the house, and that's okay. Um, so that's just one example. The other one, as far as like our marriage, so my geniuses are discernment and tenacity, and my husband's are invention and wonder. And, he's the ideas guy. And our joke is I'm the house naysayer. So, to just have that explained. It's not an excuse, but it's an explanation of, the things that we just most quickly and naturally default to. Like I'll hear ideas and I have to check myself to not evaluate them out loud right in the moment. It's not always necessary. So, I mean, that helped us immensely to be able to put language on what we were doing a lot and where we would kind of clash in that way, even though we're both doing the thing that we most naturally go to and we're quite good at those things. My husband has amazing ideas and I'm pretty good at seeing what's feasible and what might not be. So, but there can be tension in that. So it's just so helpful. I mean, and we talk about it. It'll get into our vocabulary very frequently, at least every other day. But maybe we're working genius geeks over here. But it's just really, really helpful to have that language, this shared language of how we behave.
Yeah, I think the language is so huge. Just being able to name something. I found that when I was going through coaching is simply being able to name your emotions, being
Right.
able to name your, like you said, your natural inclination, the way that you tend to do something, or recognize this is why this is a frustration for me. I think this is true whatever type of assessment we're looking at, whether it's working genius or temperaments, or even people who go through and get, adult ADHD diagnosis. Just having the language to articulate why their brain works a certain way.
Hmm.
But like you said, recognizing it as these are my gifts and this isn't my gift, and that's okay. Because
Right.
I don't have to be excellent at everything.
At everything. Yes. You don't have to be excellent at everything at all times for all people and all projects.
And I think it's so easy to discount ourselves because we see the gift in other people and we don't understand why we can't do that. But it's more challenging to recognize our gift because it is so natural to us. And so someone else might look at us and say, "Oh my gosh, Karyn, you're so good at this, but you maybe don't recognize it as much." At least that's how I feel. I don't recognize my gifts as easily, I don't think, because they do come naturally to me. So it doesn't feel like a gift.
Right. Right. Yeah, I can see that. Where it's like if something that is just happening so naturally is easy to not see it.
Yeah, like someone who is really good at spreadsheets are like, "Oh my gosh, this is so simple." And you're like, "What just happened?" Okay,
Give
will
me
you?
anything, I'll put it on a spreadsheet.
Yes. Okay, will you walk us through a general overview of the six working geniuses?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just give like a quick description of each. So there are six, and they spell the word widget. So every first letter of each genius creates the acronym widget. So the first one is wonder. And this activity is where someone really sees the big questions and possibilities. They thrive in pondering a situation or just really anything that they notice, they start pondering about it. The next one is invention. And this is where new solutions are created. These people, innovate with a blank whiteboard. You give them that and a marker, and they are just good to go. They love it. Just coming up with new ideas and new solutions for whatever the wanderer is asking about. Then we have discernment, and this is the just intuitive ability to assess and evaluate ideas, situations. So the discerner is evaluating the ideas that the inventor is proposing. Then the next step is galvanizing. And here, the galvanizer really thrives in energizing and rallying people around whatever chosen idea or initiative has been discerned. The next one is enablement. And here we have this is where the support really is. So people with enablement have the natural ability to give support and assistance in the way that is needed for that project or that person to make those ideas come to life. And then tenacity is the end. And this is where the work really gets finished. We are landing the plane, crossing the finish line, really seeing results to the standards that we set. So that's it. There's widget, and we all have two of those as our geniuses. Those are the areas where we naturally thrive. That's where we get our joy and our energy. We really shine there. It's best for us and, the people we work with and the organizations that we serve if most of our work can be in our geniuses. The next section, the next two are what we call our competencies. These areas, they neither energize nor completely drain us, but we don't love those. And then the last two would be our frustrations, and those are areas that we might actually be able to do pretty well. A lot of times we can do all six pretty well. I mean, in reality, we have to do all six. We say every job is a six-letter job, but those last two are our frustrations, are areas that can really drain us. Either we find them literally frustrating, or they're areas that we just kind of tend to skip or procrastinate on. So that's it. That's the basic overview of the working genius.
And if you want to go a little deeper into the explanations, again, go back and listen to episode 59 with Karyn because we talk about these a little more in depth. But today, what we wanted to do is just kind of draw some parallels between working genius and temperaments and understanding, again, more about our gifts, more about how we can draw from these for knowledge of self and understand the uniqueness and the beauty of the way that God made us. And I just want to reiterate this. I know I've said it on the podcast what feels like a million times, but your temperament or your working genius is not your identity. This is a way to describe part of who you are. Again, they are different ways to describe your natural inclinations, where you may thrive more easily, but we are all unique and none of us fit into a nice, tidy little box. So, just like there are combinations for temperaments, you might be choleric sanguine, there are combinations for working genius. For example, I am a WE or wonder enablement. And so Karyn can tell us more about combinations, or you can reach out to her if you want to know more about your specific combination. But I just want to say that before we get started, this is going to be a lot of conversation about just where we think these overlap, but you are unique. And just because we say it doesn't mean that's where you fall. This conversation is to get you thinking and kind of pondering and wrestling in your heart and taking it to the Lord and asking Him about, Lord, what do you want me to know about myself? And that's the purpose of this. So we just want to say that up front. You may not fall into the tidy little box, and that is okay.
That's great. I love that you said that, Kylie. If the video of this were ever available, everyone would see me like very grandiosely nodding my head and pumping my fist. Yes, it is not a labeling and not putting people in boxes. Yes, and it is not like the definition, the be all end all of your identity. So, yeah, love that. It's just another layer of understanding ourselves and others.
Yes, and we have all of them within us, and we are always working to be able to operate at our best capacity in those, but also recognizing we have faults. And the Lord made each of us with different gifts. And when we operate too far out of our gifts, sometimes we are taking away opportunities for people to operate in their gifts. So just recognizing, yes, sometimes I need to work out of a working frustration,
Mhm.
but if I can stay in my genius and there's someone else who can also operate in their genius, isn't that going to be a better way for us to not get burnout, for our family to function well, for our team to function well?
Right, right. It's just such an opportunity for better collaboration.
And quick recap. So we did working genius. Again, that's wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, tenacity. If you are brand new to this podcast, the temperaments are choleric, sanguine, melancholic, phlegmatic. If you want to know your temperament and you want to learn more about that, please reach out to me. I will walk you through it. But the choleric is quick to react, and that impression is going to linger. The sanguine is quick to react. That impression is going to dissipate quickly. The melancholic is slow to react. The reaction will linger. And the phlegmatic is slow to react, and the reaction will dissipate quickly. So that's a very general overview, but your cholerics are usually more of your leadership roles. They like to be in control. The sanguines are your outgoing, social, like to be the center of attention people, but they are also very creative and idea makers. Your melancholics are often called your perfectionists and your deep thinkers. And your phlegmatics, these are the balance peacekeepers. They avoid confrontation at all costs, and they are someone you want to have in your circle because they are just going to help keep things from escalating too quickly. All right, Karyn, do you want to tell us some of the parallels that you've kind of noticed as an overlap between working genius and temperaments?
Sure. Um, and as I said before we hit record, and so I'll say it for the audience now, I have a dabbler's understanding of the temperaments. I love the topic. An expert, I am not. So, there might be some typical matchups. And as I was preparing for this, I thought, oh, maybe like stereotypical matchups between the working
Yeah.
genius and the temperaments. Assumptions like, oh, well, are all melancholics wanderers?
Mm,
Or is that too easy of a pairing? For choleric, are they the invention folks? Then when we get to discernment, is it just going to be the phlegmatics and the melancholics? And then the galvanizing, the easy pairing would be, oh, well, the sanguines, you know.
mm.
And then enablement, well, the phlegmatics, the peacekeeping helpers, but then the sanguines too, And then the last one, tenacity. Oh, the cholerics, let's get this done. But I think those are sort of like too easy, and it doesn't just end there. I think every genius can show up and does. This is where I'll say this is truth. Every genius can show up in every single temperament, just in different ways.
Yeah, maybe we can investigate that a little bit too. I was thinking as you were reading back through the different working geniuses, I was like, I know what they are not. The sanguine is not tenacity. The sanguine, someone who is high sanguine is not a finisher. That one I can tell you is not going to be likely. Maybe if they're sanguine choleric, they can fall into a finisher or a sanguine melancholic, but someone who is very high sanguine is going to struggle with tenacity. And I find that in myself. I am great at the ideas and the wonder. I think sanguines could possibly fall into wonder too, just because they're so creative
Hmm.
and so looking at different ways to approach things. But like you said, the melancholics too, the deep thinkers. And this is just fascinating, I think, to find this overlap. I hope someone does a study someday.
Oh my
I
gosh, the
volunteer, I
data would be.
volunteer, I volunteer myself to be part of the data.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's funny that, whenever I see deep thinker with melancholic, like I'm a melancholic, like a pretty strong melancholic. And I I don't consider myself to be that deep of a thinker, and wonder is my last frustration. So not everyone's working genius profile will necessarily line up beautifully with their temperament's results, but mine,
Mhm.
I think, kind of do. Discernment is my first. So, with the melancholic tendencies, I think that
Mhm.
that was like a pretty strong correlation there.
Can you just tell me, let's just maybe self-analyze ourselves, all right? So for your working genius, what are your top two?
My top two are discernment and tenacity.
Okay, discernment and tenacity, which I can totally see the tenacity with the melancholic there. And what are your frustrations?
Galvanizing and wonder.
Okay, and I can totally see the galvanizing too. So you are very high melancholics, followed by cholerics. So melancholic, choleric. Melancholics are more introverted, cholerics are more extroverted, tend to be. And the high ideals of the melancholic, that perfectionist, I think can really show up in the tenacity, the deep thinking, and the discernment. Galvanizing is not going to be high for the melancholic because of that introverted temperament. And like you said, wonder, maybe that's just one you're thinking about things, but maybe you're not questioning so much in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more of an evaluating than considering possibilities. Give me the possibilities and the ideas, and then I evaluate them.
Yeah, because melancholics, one of their contributions is that they are highly analytical.
Hmm. Hmm. I,
Does that
I I guess
fit?
yeah. So for me, that lands with like I'm analytical in a gut reaction kind of way. That could be described as one way of analyzing. As far as getting into the nitty-gritty of all the data and the facts, and this isn't actually necessarily a part of discernment. It is an intuition, a gut feel about something. So yeah, I mean, it is interesting how the descriptions of the strengths of the temperaments might line up with the tendencies of all of the geniuses.
And also, I think it's so beautiful because, again, each one is like a zoomed in part of us, right? It's like zooming in on a piece of us, but it's not the whole picture. That's the beauty of looking at different assessments. I mean, you could pull strength finders into here. I know you
Hmm.
told me something about WE as the idealistic supporter, and I immediately thought idealistic. That's a strength finder's word.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, for every genius pairing, we have what we call the unique pairing descriptions, and there's a clever name for each one. So yeah, like the idealistic supporter, I'm my pairing DT or TD is the judicious accomplisher. So there's little descriptions of what your tendencies are and where you might have some challenges too.
So, what are some of the challenges for myself as the WE that's wonder enablement? So, again, wonder questioner, enablement supporter. I want to help. Someone asks me for help. It's like I drop everything and I'm there. What do you need?
And you're there,
I'm more
right?
likely to drop my own stuff to help them finish than I am to finish my own stuff.
Right, right. So there is an aspect of wanting to please others. And
That
so
fits.
yeah, yeah. And so you might, be overly deferential, but, hesitate to, maybe get what you want, letting others make the first move.
And I can see that in my high sanguine as well. The people pleaser enablement
Mm-hmm.
definitely fits. Will you share a couple more of the combinations just so people can hear?
Sure. Yeah, so actually I can read like the actual description for yours. So this is the wonder enablement or enablement wonder. So for the purposes of these descriptions, there's no difference between the order of how the two geniuses line up or how they rank in the profile. But people with this pairing of WE or EW derive real joy and energy from providing meaningful support to causes that align with their idealistic values and sense of belonging. They are often modest about their abilities, loyal and selfless, proving to be extremely valuable, low maintenance team members. Because of their depth and desire to please others, they can sometimes be overly deferential and often hesitate to initiate change, preferring to let others make the first move. We call this pairing the idealistic supporter. So, this language is from The Working Genius. This is the official
Hmm.
pairings overview.
I love
You
listening
just
to
like,
that
oh, here it
though,
is.
because all of these, when we hear them, they're just phrased so kindly. Like if I were to look at mine and be like, oh, but I wish I was that, right? Like that's the natural tendency of, myself 10 years ago. I would have just been stuck in the comparison of, but I want to be this instead. And
Right.
the way that these are phrased just really help us look at all these wonderful words about you,
Yes, they're very gentle and they're kind and praising at the same time. They're great.
which
No, I
is
love
how we
these.
should be with ourselves, recognizing
Absolutely.
we have some faults. There are some areas that we need to take to the Lord and ask Him to help us work on those. But we are good. We are made in the image of God, and there are all of these wonderful things about us. And can we just rest in those and recognize our goodness?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and read yours.
Okay. All right, so mine, DT or TD, again, that's discernment, tenacity, discernment. People with this pairing derive real joy and energy from getting the right things done efficiently and effectively, and using their judgment to avoid wasting time and resources. They get a lot done by identifying the highest priorities and holding themselves to high standards of execution. They are prudent, focused, and diligent. They often feel unnecessary angst about the possibility of failing or when working with others who do not share their high standards in driving for closure. We call this pairing the judicious accomplisher.
I think that fits very much with choleric melancholic. It is such a perfect explanation because the cholerics are the people who sometimes forget that others have emotions. They are so focused
Mm,
on finishing the goal and they want to get it done that they can forget about the people around them and how their goal setting and their need to finish the goal to accomplish can impact the people around them
right.
because they're so motivated by improvement and growth and discipline and just
And
need,
results.
yes, very results oriented. And then you tie that in with the melancholic who wants things to be right. They
Mhm.
want the perfect ideal, and you get exactly what you just described. Can you read one? I know there are too many combinations to read them all, but we haven't heard one with galvanizing.
Why don't we do like invention? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will find that one. Okay. So, galvanizing with invention, people with this pairing derive real joy and energy from generating new ideas and convincing others of an idea's merit. Exuberant and enthusiastic, they are not easily deterred by initial pushback and enjoy the challenge of sharing ideas to convince others to act. They can be hasty to start selling ideas before taking time to fully consider the prudence of an idea and can be initially perceived as slightly over the top in their approach. We call this pairing the evangelizing innovator.
I love it. And again, I hear so much of the sanguine in there, but also the choleric because the sanguine, and again, these are our extroverted temperaments, the sanguine can be really impulsive, kind of
Mhm.
jumping into things, but loves working on things with other people. They love the variety, which I think you get with galvanizing. You're talking to different groups of people, you're motivating them. They have an aversion to negativity. They're just these overly positive people.
Positive.
But
Mhm.
with the choleric, you also get that resilience of not keeping them from moving forward. Whereas the sanguine, sometimes their feelings might get hurt and they would crash into that, oh, nobody likes me. But when it's paired with something like the choleric, they have that resilience to kind of just move forward.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, there are 15 of these pairings descriptions, and they're all pretty enlightening. Yeah, usually when people hear them, they usually resonate pretty well.
They do fit.
Yeah.
That's what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yes, usually. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let's flip a little bit. Karyn has never done the temperaments workshop. So some of you listening have, some of you have not. But let's just, for funsies, since you shared
Yeah.
so much about me, let's talk a little bit more about the melancholic choleric. You can kind of tell me if any of these fit. And specifically, let's look at melancholic first because that is your most dominant.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to reverse order here. We're going to look at some of the triggers of the melancholic. Some people don't like the word
Ah,
triggers, but these are the things that would be your working frustrations if we were to use that language.
okay.
Like where, oh my gosh, when these things happen, this is where I start to feel like I'm not operating well, right? So it could be others' intense emotions, people trying to
Mm-hmm.
change your mood, like when the sanguine comes up to
Mm,
you and they
mm-hmm.
say, hey, why don't you just cheer up? It's not that bad. People not valuing your opinion.
That fits with
Shallow,
discernment too. But go
uh,
ahead. We're going to stick with the temperaments here. Okay, keep
yeah,
going.
no, this is great. Shallow thinkers, noise, constant stimulation, not
Hmm.
knowing the right way or looking or feeling stupid,
Yeah.
self-judgment, self-criticism, And then this is a huge one that I think comes up a ton for melancholics is not having adequate alone time, not
Okay.
having time to
That's
reflect.
it. That's the whole podcast right there. You are correct.
That
Ding, ding, ding.
fits.
Yes. And I'm an only child, so it's
Were
super strong.
are there any of those that are like really, really you're like this one? This is the one that if it could go away, my life would be so much
Oh
better.
gosh. I can feel my heart is pounding right now. No, they were all good. Yeah. No, they're spot on.
This is the beauty though. I want everyone listening to just understand already she can feel that in her body just
Yeah,
talking
no,
about
I'm
it.
like I can feel my heart in my throat and I'm doing some sort of like reactive laughing.
Yeah, and this is a good thing, right? We have to look
Yeah.
at this as a good thing because when we can identify these, just like you said, how transformative it was for you to understand your working frustrations, when we recognize these and we start to feel that feeling in our body in the day to day, we can ask ourselves, which one of these is causing that?
Hmm.
And when we can name it like, oh, I feel embarrassed because I think I look stupid right now, right?
Right. When it's not just this general, why do I feel like I feel this? But when you can really pinpoint it and describe it, yeah, that's you can not to use the word calm down, but I'm using the word calm down. Like you can just come back to peace so much more easily when you have those words and where you can really call out the specific thing.
Yeah, like this is what I think the problem is. I think I look stupid right now. And then we can ask ourselves, do I actually look stupid? What does looking stupid mean? Does it just mean
Does
I
it
don't have the
mean
right
right?
answer? Right? Does it
Hmm.
mean I didn't have the I'm thinking back to like high school days, right? Like I didn't have the right answer in class. They called on me and I didn't have the right answer because I was daydreaming and I wasn't on the right page. The melancholic would never do that, by the way.
No, no, never.
But it's just this idea, and then we can ask ourselves, is this actually true? Why is it a problem? Why is it a problem that I don't have the answer? Is it actually a problem?
Hmm.
Why do I feel like I need to have the answer to everything? We can kind of just sit with those questions and go a little bit deeper. Okay, so since I made you feel so yucky, let's look at some of your
No, no, no. It was good. It was good. It wasn't
let's
yucky.
let's look at some of your gifts. Okay.
Okay.
So, you can tell me if any of these hit. Thoughtful, organized, sensitive and compassionate to others, highly detailed. Love to learn more about things that interest you. Once you are convicted of something, you're going to pursue it. You're going to go after it. You make your decisions based on very high ideals and principles. Melancholics can have a high tolerance for mortification. So I think of this as we're recording, Lent is coming up, but having a high tolerance for mortification, I've seen this come up in spouses. Like my spouse can fast and they can add in all these extra things and it doesn't bother them at all. And I'm over here and I'm the sanguine and it's like, I can barely make it through Ash Wednesday and I'm dying. Right. So
Yeah.
just recognizing that different, what is naturally more easy for them.
I don't know if mortification comes naturally to me at all. I spend more time thinking about the thing that I've decided to fast from than Jesus. So it becomes like very flip-flopped. It's like, what are we doing here?
And it could be falling into your perfectionist tendencies.
Well, there's that. Yeah.
Yeah. Want to be the best you can be. Precise when communicating your conclusions. Enforcing rules and schedules and establishing accountability.
A lot of some of those are aspirational. Like I wish
Oh.
that I could enforce rules and schedules even for myself, you know.
Mhm.
There was another one. I also wish that I were more compassionate.
It would be
Um,
interesting to see if your husband would say the same thing about you.
hmm,
Like we talked about at the beginning, is it that we don't have these gifts or that we don't aren't as easily able to recognize them in
to see
ourselves?
them. I'm very impatient though, so then I think, and I see it, with the people around me who are around me the most, and I'm like, oh, well, if I'm so impatient, how can I be compassionate,
Yeah. And I think this is so cool. This is just a perfect example of the temperament combinations. So most of us are not any one temperament, which is a good
Right.
thing. We're more
Yeah.
balanced. So if I were to read the contributions of the choleric, for example, bringing clear direction to a project, figuring out a way without somebody telling you what to do. Can I persevere and push plans through to completion? That's where I see your tenacity coming up.
Hmm.
Decisive when other people aren't. Taking charge in the absence of leadership. Not being afraid of hard work or thriving in challenges. Wanting to be the best and to persevere. Not being threatened when people disagree with you. Moving forward, completing tasks. Finding the quickest way to complete something.
Yeah, I think some of those do really resonate, and some of them I think would be more like situationally specific, you know? And
Yes.
like as you were saying at the beginning, none of these are like hard and fast. This is that, at
Hmm.
all times. So yeah, I think those descriptions apply sometimes, but often. Yeah. Sometimes,
Yes.
but often. Does that make sense?
Yes. And
But
again,
yeah.
this is about finding language that fits us.
Hmm.
So I love just seeing the list, and we can start with where our primary temperament is, but giving ourselves the freedom to look at the descriptors of the other temperaments, because again, we have all of them.
All of them. Hmm.
And we also intake learn behaviors from our environmental situations. And again, like you said, the situational. So if I were to answer some of these and I'm in my work brain, of how do I respond at work versus how do I respond to things at home? Because sometimes we've kind of trained our brains to react a certain way. And I think that that's fascinating too. But again, just going back to I'm not in a box. I can start with my natural inclinations where my temperament shows me that I might fall, but can I just get language and self-awareness around what I'm great at, whether it falls from my quote unquote temperaments list or not?
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, all of that is just so helpful. The self-awareness piece is huge, right?
Which is really what we want everyone to have, is to just grow in that. And there's self-awareness that comes from these types of assessments that we can take and going through workshops and working with coaches because you go another layer deeper, I think, each time you meet with a coach. Like you're
Hmm.
just peeling back all the layers and getting to the root of things. And I totally just forgot what I was going to say. That's something good. Do you happen to know? You said with your working genius, you are DT, so
Hmm.
discernment, tenacity. What is your husband?
Yeah, he's IW, Invention Wonder.
So you don't have any overlap in your working
We
geniuses.
don't. So we have the most you can possibly have on a team of two. You can only cover four, you know.
Right. How does this show up with your kids? Is there any sort of hereditary handing down of geniuses?
It's funny. So there is a student assessment, came out a couple months ago, and it's geared for folks in between the ages of like 14 and 20, early 20s, mainly because they probably don't have like work experience. So the questions are written in the language that would apply more to like their experiences at home and school. So our eldest is 14, and it came out right around his birthday, and he said, "Oh, are you gonna get me the work? You gonna make me take the student assessment for my birthday?"
Ah,
And so we did. And so
yes.
he is a WT. So he got one from each of us.
That is
So
fascinating.
it is fascinating, and I'm still like, okay, well, what do we do with this? It was interesting watching him take the assessment. I was trying not to be leading, but I was trying to explain what some of the, questions might be if he had any questions about it, but it was pretty straightforward for him. I can see those things in him, but it's also, watching him do his responsibilities and projects, how those things kind of show up. But I'm also convinced he's a phlegmatic. I don't really, there's no confirmation on that yet. I wonder what his second one is. But yeah, I think just like in interacting with the kids, um, like this is our organization, if we want to put those words on it. My husband and I were the leaders. He's the leader, and then I'm the,
Hmm.
next. It is interesting how we overlap and how we complement each other in all of the different areas of projects or things that we're trying to get done. I'm grateful that we have those four, that we're covering as many as we can possibly
Hmm.
cover. I can't remember if I said this already. I'm also pretty sure my husband's a sanguine. So yeah, we've got the mix. And like we said earlier, just being aware of the way we complement each other and having this appreciation for the gifts that everyone is bringing.
I love that. There is a kids temperament assessment. So there are different temperaments assessments out there. There are free ones. I always send people to the Metanoia Catholic one, which is online. But there is a kids version. It's just a paper one. You print it out. The questions are very straightforward. And that one is actually by Connie Rossini. I know I've bought it for $1 off of Amazon, but I'm pretty sure it is still free on her website, contemplativehomeschool.com. So I will double check that. But if that's right, I'll link it in the show notes. I'll link it in the show notes. How about that? So if
Yeah, that'd
anyone
be
wants
great.
that one, and she has two incredible books, I use them as references a lot on temperaments with your kids. But I have found them just eye-opening to learn about myself. And she includes even in there scripture verses and pairings of like if you are a choleric parent and your child is choleric, be aware of how you're talking about these things. Or if you're a choleric and your child is phlegmatic.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that that was so eye-opening. I'm sure similar to how it is to find out that your son is a wonder tenacity person, which I think is
Right.
the coolest combination. That sounds
Oh,
like,
it's like the bookends, right? The
yes,
the two extremes.
the start and the finish.
Yeah.
Which we didn't talk about that in this episode. We talked about it in the last episode, but just for anyone who heard that, the bookends, when you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity, there it's kind of like a cycle. So the wonder person gets the questions started, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. The invention person takes those questions, comes up with ideas. The discernment person decides, is this a good idea? Or is this you just inventing because you like to invent? If it is a good idea, the galvanizer gets people on board. The enablement person is the support, and then the tenacity person helps push that project to the end line.
Yep. Yeah. So, not every project or initiative is going to go through that in
Right.
order, like perfectly neat, but that is the general order of things, right? Um, and all are necessary. So if we're missing one, the project will not necessarily fail, but have a lesser chance of seeing success. So, yeah, what do you do with having wonder and tenacity? You need the middle stuff. And again, we can do all the things, but where do we really get our most joy? And we need others. We can do it, but we just really, really need others to help us. And this is how we were made. God made us to be in communion with others. So when we look at widget, getting back to that, um, there's another way of looking at the working genius where we call it the altitudes or elevation of work. And we could take some time to get into that, but it's the general order of things. And when you switch back and forth and skip certain geniuses going, you're in tenacity, but then you're talking about invention things, then you're feeling what we call turbulence. And that can make something feel unsteady and not so pleasant. So when we recognize that we might be jumping through the different activities and different stages of work, then that can cause hiccups and delays and, like I said, failures sometimes. So, yeah, just having everybody aware of what's needed at what time can be really helpful and just really help with getting things done.
Yeah. Do you have any tips, or is this something that maybe you go through with clients when you work with them? I know I understand how this works in a team setting, but I'm thinking in more of a personal setting.
Mm.
Like if we're home and we have a project that we have to finish, but I have to go through my working frustrations. And for me, I'm not the bookends, but I'm close. Right? I have to work through that middle part and sometimes it's so hard to get to the end because of that turbulence in the middle. Like I lose my energy and momentum in the middle
Mhm.
or maybe pushing through the end, that tenacity piece. Do you have any tips for working through those working frustrations when we have to operate in them?
Right. I think it's just the awareness that it's a frustration. I mean, as simple as that. And if it, sounds like, oh, that's too basic, but it's really just that, just being aware, like God did not wire me to enjoy this, but I have to do it and I can do it. I can do anything for 5 minutes or
Mm,
5 weeks or whatever it is. But, I can do this. I might not enjoy it, but I am able and I can get through it. And then it's like, okay, well, what do I have to set up in order to do that? Do I need to put a sign on the door? Please don't bother mommy for the next 30 minutes. I got to knock this out. And then how do you invite others either to allow you to get that done or to help you get it done? But
yeah,
it's just the awareness of it really is key.
I agree with that. And I think that I'm stealing this from a friend of mine who was a high school principal, but he would call it, he's like, I'm going to schedule my week, my tea time, my tenacity time. This is the
Hmm.
day I'm going to do emails because I
Yeah.
don't like doing them, but I have to do them. And so I think that's something I need to go back to is like scheduling my tea time, that tenacity, push through stuff where it's not being creative. It's really just responding to the things that you have to respond to. Or maybe in your house, it's like the day that you're changing all the bedding on your
Oh gosh, I have tenacity, and
beds.
yeah, we shouldn't talk about that with with me.
Oh, good. So I can feel really good about myself that that's a struggle for me.
Yeah, this is where I bring in the situationally specific aspect.
There are still things that we may dislike doing.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Do you have anything else you want to add on Working Genius? Any tips you maybe have come up with since the last time that we talked or stories you want to share?
I think it just always comes back to that basic thing of awareness, and when something's just so basic, you're like, oh, that can't be valuable. But just the mere awareness is just so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. So I pray that anyone that's listening, this has opened up your eyes a little bit more. And maybe if you listened the last time and you forgot about Working Genius, I think just bringing this to the forefront of your mind can be so helpful. I know one of the things that I do with my clients or when I'm walking a group through developing a plan of life. So the most recent one we did was developing a Marian plan of life. But there's a spot in the packet that I print out for them where we write out our spiritual gifts, if we know them, our strengths, our temperaments, our working geniuses, like just having all of those words on the same page so that when we are operating in our frustrations, we can look back and say, okay, but I'm really good at these things. These are my gifts. And right now I'm just not operating from them, and that's okay. But how can I re-energize because we need that.
Right.
We have to go
Right.
back to how can we re-energize and incorporate more of these times when we're operating from our gifts.
Right. Yeah. And the times when we're in our frustrations, it's, being aware that I'm in this place right now, that doesn't make me a bad person or a failure. It's just, this is a thing I struggle with, and that's okay.
This is not my favorite. I can still do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thank praise the Lord, just thank God for all the people who that is their working genius. Like praise
Right.
God for
Yes.
them so that I don't have to do this all of the time.
Right. Well, and you even said it earlier, when we're doing something that is one of our frustrations, why stop? Allow someone else where it is one of their thriving areas, allow them to do it. We're keeping that from them if we don't allow others in and don't allow others to operate in their geniuses.
Yeah, I think my husband definitely has to be invention would have to be one of his top. He probably has invention and galvanizing somewhere if they're not his working geniuses and his working competencies.
Hmm.
And I do rely on him when I'm really stuck. I'm like, you are so good at problem solving. He's high choleric. And I'm like, I can't figure this out. Can you just do it? Because he thrives there. He loves it. He loves goals. He loves finding ways to make things work more efficiently and really taking on that role. Like he wants people to bring them problems so that he can find ways to solve them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's great. We should do that. Allow those people to shine in those areas.
So the rest of us can not have to do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
We talked about just being thankful for our gifts and recognizing and being thankful for other people's gifts, which I think is a perfect segue into the prayer tip for today, which again, it's something simple, not overcomplicated. Some of us might be doing it already, but if we're not, such an easy thing to apply to our lives. You said that you have been writing every day, just I'm
Yeah.
thankful for, or
Yep.
God, thank you for.
Yeah. It's so simple. We hear about gratitude and thankfulness all the time, but it really does make a difference in your day. I don't always get to it first thing in the morning, but I try to do it at some point during the day, writing down three things that I'm thankful for. And I was doing it with a friend, and then she had the idea instead of writing, I'm thankful for, writing out, God, thank you for the
Mm.
thing. And then not just writing a list, like a complete sentence with God, thank you for X. God, thank you for Y. God, thank you for Z.
Hmm.
And there's always something to be thankful for. So, yeah, I've really been seeing the value in doing that.
I a spin on this even that I think is so helpful for me, and it's something I have to be reminded of often, but it really does help me is, for example, if I was in my working frustration or life just happens and circumstances are not great. Maybe
Mm.
I have a deadline and I feel awful. I'm sick or my kid's sick and I was up with them overnight or we're struggling with our teenagers or whatever it happens to be, right? Just praising God for that. Or maybe it's a coworker and they just said something really snarky, like, thank you, God, or God, I thank you for that snarky person to help me grow in humility, or
Mm,
however we need to word that, but just recognizing that God allowed that thing to happen to help us grow and to form us. And so thanking Him for it, thanking Him for the
right.
person that makes us crazy.
Right. Thanking him for the good that comes from the hard thing.
Yes. And for me, I found that that just brings a lot of peace. So maybe that will help someone else, maybe not, but I'm throwing that out there.
Sounds good. Yeah.
All right. You also provided a scripture verse, and I just want to read it because I think it's beautiful. Proverbs 31, verses 26 and 27. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Do you want to add anything?
Yes.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Often aspirational, but I just really want to be reminded of that as much as possible. Yeah.
And
I
with
need it. I need
aspirations,
those reminders.
yeah, saying it out loud, though, I mean, it's kind of like when you go to confession and you're promising the Lord, I'm not going to do this again. And we know that we are going to do it again, but it's that intention of we're going to say it and we're going to say it and we're going to say it because someday, with God's grace, it will come true, right? When we open our mouth, it will be wisdom. Right now, it's not all the time, but if we can grow a little bit more each time,
Yeah,
that's how we grow in virtue, right? It's just being intentional and doing it as often as we can and allowing His grace to flow through.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here. Do you want to tell everyone again where they can find you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Kylie. This is always really fun. Yeah, people can find me at supportingstars.com. It's basically just my online shingle. And I'm also findable on LinkedIn And I do exist on Instagram at time of recording, although I am not what you would call active on there, but I do exist on the internet. So yeah, I can be found.
If someone wants to message you, they can do that.
They can. Yes.
Awesome.
Hey, dear friends, as this episode wraps up, I just want to take a moment to thank you, first of all, for being part of this journey. And I also just wanted to let you know the podcast is going on a very short break. Don't worry, I have some amazing guests lined up at the other side of this, a couple of Catholic authors and priests and Catholic writers. In the meantime, I pray that you will just create some space for the Lord this Lent. And if you are really looking for some spiritual nourishment, something to help you this Lenten season, I encourage you to go back and listen to episode 43 on failing forward when it feels like your Lenten struggles are very heavy. And also episode 44 with Beth Bubick is so, so good on spiritual fasting miracles, because we all know that can be a bit of a struggle as we go through Lent. It's easy to make excuses about why we don't want to do that little thing that we're asked to do. So I encourage you to go back, re-listen to those episodes. And if you've never heard them before, give it a listen, give it a try. Lastly, if you are not following, be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss it when the podcast is back up and running here in a few weeks. Please pray for me. I am praying for you. Have a wonderful Lenten season, and God bless.
Beautiful souls, thank you again for journeying with me. If you have been blessed by this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a review. Be sure to screenshot it, share it on your social media stories, and don't forget to tag me on Instagram or Facebook at Kylie Hein. Stay persistent in prayer, protect your peace, and as always, share the light of Christ with everyone around you.